Okay, everybody, we're going to go ahead and get started. It's a couple minutes after 8. So I'd like to welcome everybody. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Aaron Stapleton, and I'm extremely excited to have Dr. Christian Gausvik with us today to talk to us about the COVID vaccine and answer any questions you might have. He's going to go through his presentation, and then at the end, we're going to go through questions, and I'll go over that in just a little bit. A little background about Christian. So Dr. Christian Gausvik completed his undergraduate school at Xavier and medical school at the University of Cincinnati, where he did several years of geriatric research. He completed his residency at Christ Hospital, UC Family Medicine. Since he was a child, Dr. Gausvik had a passion for older adult care. Dr. Gausvik is a fellow physician in geriatrics for the Christ Hospital Group. And in 2019, he was awarded the Ohio Academy of Family Physicians Resident Leader of the Year Award. Now, being in healthcare, I've been lucky enough to get to know a decent amount of doctors, but I specifically reached out to Christian to help us with this call because of his passion for care of older adults and his candor. He's going to give you the facts today about the vaccine and assist you with the questions that you may have. But ultimately, it's your decision to make if you taking this vaccine is right for you, your family, and the older adults that you care for. To make this as efficient as possible, I've placed everyone on mute. If you have a question, please place it in the chat box, and I will ask Dr. Gausvik once he is finished with his presentation. This call is going to be recorded. And without further information, I'm pleased to pass this over to Dr. Gausvik. Christian?
Thank you, Aaron. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay. Well, like Aaron said, my goal here today is just to give you the facts from reputable sources and then help you understand and answer any questions that you might have. Certainly not trying to convince anyone to do something that they don't feel is right for them, but I think that we can all make informed decisions better when we have the facts and understand what they mean. So I'm going to go through just a short presentation, and then like Aaron said, at the end of that, leave plenty of time to answer any specific questions that anyone has, but I think we'll cover probably a lot of the big concerns that I'm used to hearing in these first few slides here. All right. So just to start off by saying I did get my vaccine last Tuesday up at Maple Knoll Village, where I do most of my geriatric work, along with all the other physicians that I work with. And it has been really inspiring to see the number of pictures of other physicians getting their vaccines, other healthcare workers, nurses, and aides, and everyone that helps make the hospitals and healthcare system run. It's been really neat to see everybody kind of posting their pictures and helping everyone feel confident that this is the right thing to do. So we're going to go through a little bit of how the vaccine works, what some of the common side effects are, a few of the big concerns and some of the myths that are out there. And then, like I said, we'll go through any of your questions that are left at the end. So just a few overview slides. So this is all information from the Centers for Disease Control, you know, a good reputable website to do some of your own research on, and I'll give a link for that at the end. But in general, the goal of this vaccine is to develop immunity. So we want your body to be able to recognize this virus without having to get the illness. So the goal of the vaccine is to kind of prepare your immune system to be ready to fight this illness before you're exposed to it. And that works by leaving behind these memory immune cells. And I'm sure lots of you have heard the word or the term mRNA vaccine floating around. So both of the current vaccines being offered from Pfizer and Moderna are mRNA vaccines. So I've got a couple slides after this to help kind of make this a little simpler. But in essence, the vaccine provides a small piece of information to your body for your own body to make a protein, and then for your immune system to recognize it. So the really kind of neat things about that are that your own body's making this protein. It's not the entire virus, just a very small piece of it. And I think the coolest part of this, and something a lot of people might not realize, is after your body makes that protein and shows it to your immune system, the genetic material from the vaccine, really all the components of the vaccine just go away. Your body eliminates them and really just leaves behind these memory immune cells. And those are your own body's cells, and they're there to help your body recognize the virus when you do come in contact with it. So maybe some quick analogies that have been floating around that might make this make a little more sense. So an mRNA vaccine is not the virus. You can kind of think of it as an email, or I've heard people refer to it as a recipe that gets sent to your immune system so that it knows what this virus looks like and how to take care of it. And then it just disappears after that. So what remains back is just your own body's immune cells, those memory cells that remember how to fight this virus. But you're never getting the whole virus in this vaccine. Another way to think about it that I thought was kind of clever, these mRNA vaccines are like playing the catchy part of a song on loop until it's recognizable without listening to the whole song. So if you just think about that really catchy part of a song that gets stuck in your head, you just hear a few beats of that and you already know what the whole song is going to be. So that's like your body, you know, getting to just know that little bit of the song, and then it can stop the song or stop that virus without even having to hear the whole thing. So that's kind of some different ways to think about it. Some other things to keep in mind about mRNA vaccines, like the Pfizer and Moderna ones, they don't use live virus, so you're not getting exposed to the virus. None of this genetic material, none of this information ever enters the important part of your own cells. So it's never going anywhere near your own DNA. And as soon as your body makes those immune cells, your body breaks down this vaccine and gets rid of these components. So nothing is sticking around in your body other than your own immune cells. I think this is the most encouraging graph, and I have not seen it displayed a lot of places, but what you see here is that top red line are folks that were getting the placebo or the kind of false vaccine in the study. The blue line are folks that got the real vaccine, and the upward direction on the graph is number of COVID cases. So as early as day 10, after getting the first dose of the vaccine, you can really see those numbers flatten out. So I think in the world of vaccines, in the world of medicine, seeing a difference this dramatic after just 10 days it really is very impressive. So I think the piece of information you can take from this is that this does work, and it certainly reduces the number of cases, and potentially as early as day 10 after receiving the vaccine, which is pretty exciting. There are two vaccines going around out there. I'm sure you all have heard the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines. Pfizer got approval to be used first and Moderna second. They really are essentially the same. So they're both mRNA vaccines like we just talked about. So just showing your body a little piece of a protein from the virus. Really the only main difference is they're both 2 shots. Moderna's 28 days apart, Pfizer's 21 days apart. So not a big difference there. Effectiveness, 95% for Pfizer, 94% for Moderna. Just to put that in perspective a little bit for you, the flu shot every year can range anywhere from 40 to 60, sometimes 70% effective if we're lucky. So this is remarkable effectiveness. Another common vaccine, the shingles vaccine that we recommend for everyone over 50, that one's just about high 80s to low 90s% effective. So this really in the range of vaccines is a very effective vaccine in terms of preventing severe cases of COVID. Otherwise, these two vaccines are essentially the same. I would have no concerns about choosing one versus the other. In talking with vaccine experts at Children's Hospital and other colleagues around the city, everyone I have talked to has said whichever one your employer or whichever one you're able to get first is the one that you should get. There's really no reason to select one over the other in terms of the science behind them. I get a lot of questions about what's in the vaccine, and I think there's lots of information floating around in general about what's in vaccines, especially what's in this one. And people look at the ingredient list and it can become overwhelming, the things that are listed on there. But I think similarly, it can be overwhelming to look at the ingredient list for many of the foods that we eat. Lots of things that are used in our foods have long scientific names that sound complicated and perhaps more scary than they really are. And so just breaking down what is on that ingredient list for this vaccine and what are each of those things. So the first and most important thing is that mRNA. So this is the little piece of information that your body's using to make those immune cells to be ready to fight this virus. The second thing is lipids. So this is just a fatty shell, kind of goes around that mRNA, that piece of information, and really just helps it move through our body. So it allows it to get where it needs to go. And then the last three ingredients really are just helping to keep this information piece safe. So there's salts that are going to keep the pH of the liquid that the vaccine's in stable to help it prevent from breaking down. These little pieces of information are used to being in our body. And so when they're outside, we need things like salts, sugar, water, just to keep them safe from drying out, from changing. And so these other ingredients are really set for that. There are no latex, no eggs, and no other preservatives or anything like that in this vaccine. So really, ingredient lists can look a little scary, but when you start to break it down, these things all kind of fit into categories that I think most of us would be somewhat familiar with. Side effects is certainly the biggest question that we get. So these are the most common side effects. So in the arm where you get the shot, you can expect some pain, swelling, and redness, somewhat similar to a flu shot. I will say my arm was a little more sore from this than from the flu shot. But beyond that, I didn't experience any other side effects in the site of injection. And then the other most commonly reported side effects are chills, tiredness, and headache. I did have a little mild headache the next morning when I woke up that was gone within a couple of hours. Chills, that kind of fatigue and tiredness, those were pretty common in the studies. And most of those appeared within the first 24 hours and then didn't last for more than 24 hours beyond that. And I think the thing to keep in mind is this is your body's immune system revving up. So our immune system, the way it works is it creates fever. It makes you fatigued so that you rest. It does all these things to help us fight infection. And you're showing your immune system a little piece of a virus, again, not the whole virus. And so you're kind of triggering your immune system to start making these memory cells, to start thinking about this virus. And so it's not unexpected that we would have some of these same reactions. And in some ways, these should be encouraging to you because this means your body has seen that and is doing what we want it to do. But again, minor side effects that we expect. And again, not even in all people. Many people have described no side effects at all. So I wanted to go through a couple of common concerns and address those because I think those will hit on a lot of the questions that you all might have. But then certainly if we don't get anything or you want more clarification on any of that initial information, we can go through that as well. So by far the biggest thing that I hear folks say when I'm talking with patients about the vaccine is that it was developed so fast. We must have rushed through this. How can I trust that this is safe? And I think when you look at the fact that the mumps vaccine was the fastest developed vaccine in our history and it had taken 4 years, I think it can feel concerning that this happened in under a year. So I think on the surface, that is a legitimate concern and something that I think people should be asking about. Some things that you should consider and know when you're considering whether this is something that makes you feel unsafe is that mRNA vaccines, so the kind of vaccine that Pfizer and Moderna are that we talked about, showing that little piece of information to your immune system, those kinds of vaccines have been in development for years. So think of this as a platform, like an operating system, and we kind of customized this for the COVID vaccine. But the mRNA vaccine, the way mRNA vaccines work, the way they interact with the body, the ingredients we use, the way they're produced, all of that has been going on for upwards of 10 years and has been in development and constant quality improvement over that time period. This is the same platform that they used to create the SARS and MERS vaccine over the last decade. So I think what you should consider is that these vaccines didn't come out of nowhere. This is a platform that has been studied and perfected, and it has been customized for the COVID vaccine. But much of this has been studied and researched before this year. The other thing to consider is just in our lifetimes, this is the first time that governments from around the world and science from around the world and pharmaceutical industry from around the world have come together for one goal. You know, we're often all focused on many different things, and there's lots of worthy causes of research dollars, but this got the whole world's attention and allowed us to move forward in a way faster than we really ever have before. The other thing to consider is that governments across the world and the United States government through Warp Speed did put up financial assistance earlier in the process. So usually vaccines aren't getting financially supported until they have received all the necessary approvals. And then at that point, companies will begin to invest in production methods and all the things that we need to kind of scale and get these vaccines out. They were able to do that in tandem with researching the vaccine because they had financial commitments from the government up front. The other thing to keep in mind is that no steps were skipped in this development. Vaccines go through 4 phases of approval. All of those phases were completed. And so nothing was skipped, nothing was done differently other than faster than vaccines in the past. The other thing to remember is when we study vaccines, it depends on people who have received the vaccine being exposed to that virus. That's how we know if it's working or not. So when you have something that's not as widespread as COVID, that process can take a lot longer. So because COVID was so widespread, because it was out in the community so significantly, people who were part of these vaccine studies were exposed to the virus much quicker. And that allowed us to move through this process more quickly as well. Another thing that kind of goes along with that I hear a lot from patients is we have not looked at this vaccine long enough to know what the long-term side effects are going to be. We just don't know what the long-term side effects are going to be, and that feels like a concern to me. And I would agree that, you know, similar to the last one, that should be a concern and something that you ask about and get more information about. Some of the facts around this. So the clinical trial data that Pfizer presented included 44,000 participants, which is quite a few for a vaccine study. And there have been no serious safety concerns over the last 6 months. The side effects that we talked about were mild, including fatigue, headache, and even those were in fewer than 3% of participants. And we had similar results with the Moderna vaccine and similar study size. So the vaccine was studied in tens of thousands more patients than many vaccines are studied in. I think the other things to remember are your body sees that piece of mRNA, that piece of information, and creates those memory immune cells, and then the vaccine goes away. What remains is your body's ability to fight this virus because of those memory immune cells that your own body made. So the vaccine itself doesn't stay with you. Those bits of information, your body breaks that down and gets rid of that. And for that reason, vaccines almost never cause side effects after 6 weeks. 6 weeks out is about the period of time when you expect to see side effects from a vaccine occur. And really after that point, it would be really exceedingly rare to see any long-term effects from a vaccine. And when you consider that this is a similar type of vaccine that we've used in other cases. So again, like I said before, this mRNA vaccine platform was used for SARS vaccine as well. That one's been observed much longer. And so really don't expect this vaccine to behave any differently than those previous ones. So just again, a quote to kind of hammer that home. So none of the vaccine trials have reported any serious safety concerns. They have had fully independent safety monitoring boards, and safety data is continuously reviewed. The other thing is they're still collecting safety data. So it's not as if once this was released, they've stopped collecting information. In fact, you can sign up when you get the vaccine to receive a daily alert to ask you about your symptoms and help report those. So you can continue to be a part of the learning experience for this, but really feel assured that they're watching the safety of this. But again, even so, we are months and months out from the first recipients of this vaccine, and would be exceedingly rare to see any unexpected side effects at this point. Something else that I think is very important, did they study the vaccine in a diverse group? So lots of us know, reading through history of medical studies, that scientists don't always do a great job of including everyone in these study groups who are actually going to be receiving this vaccine. But they did a nice job of that this time around. So again, each vaccine study included nearly 50,000 participants, and 25% of all the participants included were underrepresented minority groups. So I think that we can feel confident in knowing that they tested this vaccine in all kinds of people that are going to receive it, to be sure that it's safe for everyone. They also tested it in older age groups and folks with other medical conditions. So if you have diabetes, heart or respiratory conditions, all of those patients were studied with this vaccine. The only people who were left out of initial trials were pregnant women and children under 12. The vaccine's not currently approved for children. And if you have a pregnancy, that's kind of a separate issue, and should really talk through that more individually. But just kind of be aware that those are the two things that were left out of the initial trials. The last concern before we get to some of your questions would be, I'm hearing a lot of people worried about this new variant that has popped up over in Europe. So just a little bit of information on that and some facts to help you make your decision. So variants are changes in the virus's genetic code. So every living thing has a DNA library made up of letters that help it be what it is. So humans have a DNA library, all of these viruses, bacteria. It's kind of the common language for living things. So COVID has 30,000 letters in its DNA library, just to give you some reference. The new variant that has popped up in Europe has 22 mutations. So in reference to the size of its DNA library, is pretty small, but still has made it more transmissible, is kind of the most common thing that we've learned about it so far. The vaccine, though, is targeted against just one part of the COVID virus, so something called the spike protein. The protein has 1,200 parts, so it's a protein is made up of little smaller parts, and this particular protein that the vaccine is for is 1,200 parts. Your body, when you get that little piece of mRNA and you make immune cells, your body sees all 1,200 parts of this protein. So your body learns 1,200 ways to recognize this virus. So even mutations that lead to these new variants that can cause the virus to behave differently, that does not necessarily mean that the vaccine isn't going to work. The CDC, the WHO, many independent vaccine experts and disease experts are very confident that the vaccine will continue to be effective against this new variant. And I think when you understand a little bit about what variant means, so this is the same virus. This isn't a new virus. It's the same one. It's had some changes in its DNA library, 22 of them. But your body has learned to recognize 1,200 parts of this protein. And so you can imagine that even making some changes here and there, while we should be paying attention to what's going on with that, it doesn't mean that your body's not going to know how to recognize this virus if you've had the vaccine. So I think that's what's kind of most important to keep in mind there. COVID also mutates much more slowly than the flu. So all viruses mutate, all viruses change their DNA over time. It's just a normal process that happens when DNA is copied and duplicated. The flu mutates quickly, and that accounts for why we're always chasing the flu with a new vaccine every year and why it isn't always a perfect solution. So that's what I have on the new variants. A few other questions that that came up, and then if these don't cover everything, then I'm happy to take more. So is this like the flu vaccine? So like I was just saying, the flu vaccine, its effectiveness ranges pretty widely, anywhere from 40 to 70% based on the year. And that's because we're trying to guess which strain is going to be most prevalent each flu season. COVID is really only, there's one strain of COVID. There's been some variants as the genetic or the DNA library has changed slightly, but nothing that has required a different vaccine. So in that way, I think it's different. Also, this vaccine is significantly more effective, 95% than compared to the flu vaccine. So it is a better vaccine, and this mutates more slowly than flu. So I think less concern about that. There is only, essentially there's one strain of COVID that it has been responsible for this pandemic. There are several variants based on mutations. A variant is a not as different as a different strain. And so really the vaccine is for the strain of COVID that is currently causing the pandemic. It is not known yet if you will need another vaccine. I think the initial reports are showing that the body's ability to fight this disease with the vaccine, the 2-dose series, is really good. So I think there's hope that, maybe this will be a one-time vaccine, maybe every 3 years. I think some of that is still unknown. So I think that's something that we're still waiting for answers on. I've had a lot of people ask, if I get the vaccine, do I still need to wear a mask? And can I be a carrier if I get the vaccine? Those, again, are somewhat unknown questions because we need more information. So it's possible that though you won't get the virus, you could still transmit it to somebody else. So for that reason, we're still going to continue to recommend mask wearing while we're in this phase where not everyone has been vaccinated. When we get to higher vaccination rates for the country, I think then that's when things will change with mask wearing, and we can see things kind of resume back to normal. We talked a little bit about the two different kinds of vaccines, essentially the same, Pfizer, Moderna, some technical differences, but no real difference in the components or the effectiveness. And then, should I wait until there's been more research to take it? I think that's the question you have to answer for yourself. I'm not here to tell you what to do there. Having spent 4 years doing a biology degree, another 4 years in medical school, and then 4 years training after that, looked at this research, thought about it, and I felt confident enough to get the vaccine last week. I've told all of my family to get it as soon as it is available, and that's what I would tell all my closest friends as well. So I feel very confident in it, knowing that this vaccine platform has been under development for many years. This didn't come out of nowhere, that we don't expect side effects from vaccines in general after that 6-week mark. And we've been studying this vaccine in a record number of people for months at this point. I really feel like this is one of the greatest scientific achievements that I think modern medicine has had in terms of getting an effective vaccine out in less than a year. This is the key to making sure that our most vulnerable patients, especially those older adults that we all care for, stay safe, and to getting our economy back on track. So I think for lots of reasons, this is a good vaccine. I feel it's safe, and I would not hesitate to have any of my family get this. But that is your question to answer for yourself. And I think the most important thing is just to make sure that you're getting good information from a reputable source. And so if I can answer any other questions, I'd be happy to do that. If there's things we didn't address or you want more clarity on anything, I will let Aaron kind of moderate that, but I'm happy to answer whatever anyone wants to hear.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Christian. So if you have any questions, again, please put that into the chat. We do have a few questions that have come through here, but we do have a decent amount of people on. So the last thing that I want is people talking over one another. So a few of the questions that have come through. Someone said a concern of theirs is that they heard the protein is similar to the placenta and the immune system will attack that protein during the body preparing for pregnancy, which is causing infertility. Can you talk just a little bit about infertility and what they've found with that?
So there's no, again, so I think a lot of things are still kind of remain to be seen. If you are currently pregnant, then I would certainly advise, talk to your OB-GYN and see what they're recommending. I think the recommendations around pregnancy are always a little bit different, and there's more kind of risk benefit to weigh. I'm not aware of any studies that have shown that there's any long-term change on fertility associated with the vaccine, or that receiving the vaccine would change your ability to become pregnant in the future or your body's response to a pregnancy. I think the only concerns that have been raised that I'm aware of are related to receiving the vaccine while you're pregnant. And those are kind of some more nuanced details that I would not be your best expert on for that.
Great. Christian, do you have to wait if you had COVID in the past to take this vaccine?
You do not have to wait. So you are able to get the vaccine if you have had COVID. There have been some questions about, well, do I need the vaccine if I had COVID? All of the studies that we've seen so far have shown that infection with COVID, just, you acquire the infection, you recovered from it, may provide 3 to 4 months of immunity from it. And again, as with many things in science, we don't have all the information. It's possible that a previous infection will allow you to remain immune for a longer period of time. But what we do know is the body's response from the vaccine works at 95% and has maintained that effectiveness over the course of these studies that have been going on since earlier this year. So I'm still encouraging folks who have had COVID to get the vaccine, because I think that there's a chance that the immune response from the vaccine is better than actually just having been exposed to the virus. But there's no reason you cannot get the vaccine if you have had a COVID infection.
Great, thank you. So one of the things that we've been hearing is allergic reactions to the vaccine. And you talked about the fact that it doesn't have egg or things that most people think of allergic reactions to. So what would be reasons or what would be things that people would need to look out for if they are allergic to something that would cause this vaccine to have a reaction?
So we're not entirely sure what. So there were 2 or 3 cases in Europe, and there's been a small number in the United States, less than 5. So in the at this point, millions of people who have received the vaccine, again, very small number. But if you are someone who has had an anaphylactic allergic reaction in the past, so you have had your throat swell up, you've stopped breathing, you've had to use an EpiPen or go to the hospital, you should talk to your doctor about that and make that decision kind of with their guidance. If you have minor, if you have seasonal allergies, if you have animal allergies, if you have minor food allergies that have never resulted in that, throat swelling, can't breathe, had to go to the hospital, then very unlikely that you would have any kind of reaction to this vaccine. So really, it's those kind of high-risk allergic patients. And the cases that we've seen this in have all been folks who have had those very significant allergies that often have resulted in kind of those extreme symptoms. But I think, other than that being a very small number, the other thing is those reactions happened, very immediately after administration of the vaccine. So places that are doing vaccine administration should be having you wait for 15 to 30 minutes after to monitor for any of those changes. And when we did ours, we had, EpiPens right there. So if anything like that were to happen, there would be able to be an appropriate response.
Okay. And then this might be a little bit specific. So if you can't answer it, I understand, but somebody's asking if it's safe to receive the vaccine pre-op. So I guess they may be going into an operation. Is it safe to receive that before they go into to an operation?
Yeah, I think anything related to an operation, I always say, ask your surgeon, because different surgeons are going to recommend different things. And so there may be an individual characteristic of this particular situation that I don't, have all the information for. But in general, there's no reason you can't receive this prior to a surgery. And in fact, depending on the surgery, I would argue if you have enough lead time and you can get it at that, 10 days before surgery, when we saw that graph really kind of level off, you would be providing yourself some additional protection as you interact with a hospital or wherever you're having the surgery done. So yeah, no reason that you can't get it before a surgery, but definitely would check with your surgeon just to be double sure.
Great. Well, I believe that is all the questions that we had. And Dr. Gausvik, I really want to thank you for taking the time to share this information, and make sure that if you have any other questions, you can scan this QR code and visit the CDC. This has been recorded, and if you would like a copy of this, I will be more than happy to share it. And I really appreciate everybody getting on and getting this information. Education is key, folks, and it is extremely important that you are educated before you go in to make a decision. And I hope that this information will allow you to make a wise decision, whichever way that is, here in the near future. So, Christian, thank you so much for this information. I thought it was great and very helpful.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate everybody taking the time to listen. If anybody has specific questions, I'm happy for Aaron to put us in touch. But the CDC website at this QR code, very comprehensive, written in a way that I think is understandable for a wide range of people. And so I'd encourage that as a reputable place to get your information.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.